This is the Rocky Mountain Dragon, Atiba, and you're listening to RMP Radio.
On the front lines, wishing they would give it a rest. Don't test, you'll be severed for good. Don't get ahead of me. You never survive, and I'm not gonna lose. We're gonna bring it our way. There's so much I could say. It's never really gone away. I feel it in my bones. Like a bright light through it all.
RMP Radio is back on the air. Hi, I am your host, Mr. Fourth Row, and joining me on this edition of RMP Radio, I've got Rocky Mountain Pro Lafayette, Noelle Summit. Noelle, how you doing?
I'm doing great. What about you?
I'm hanging in there, doing just fine. So like we do here on RMP Radio, we like to get to know a little bit more about the person behind the wrestler, what their interests outside of the squared circle, outside of the ropes. And one thing that you mentioned to me before we got started on here, you're a bit of a history buff, and in particular, the Tudor England part of history. What got you fascinated in that?
Honestly, it was the story of Henry VIII and his 6 wives. You know, I remember first learning about it in about like 3rd grade. You know, we didn't go too much in depth. You know, it was just divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. You know, and it wasn't until I got older, and again, like I've always loved history, and especially stories, kings, queens. You know, I really delved deep into these people and who they were as people, and I learned the stories behind them. Because the thing is about the story of Henry VIII, we don't really hear about a lot of the wives, with the exception of Anne Boleyn. And, you know, it started off with his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, and she was somebody who, you know, we always was told was the fat, ugly wife who was pushed aside, but she was so much more than that. And as I've like done more research, she was an amazingly educated woman. She was royalty. She had more of a claim to the throne of England than Henry did. It was insane. And his other wives, Jane Seymour, Catherine Parr, Catherine Howard, Anne of Cleves, like it hasn't been until now, until there's been things like the Spanish Princess coming out on Stars, or the White Queen on Stars, that we've really gotten to know these people, the people who were kind of pushed aside in history. These people are being brought out to the center, and they're so interesting. Like, I wear a pomegranate necklace in honor of Catherine of Aragon because her seal was the pomegranate. That was her royal seal. And it's just, you hear these stories, it's like it's straight out of a movie. And no, this really happened. It happened 506 years ago, and these people were really living these lives and going through these things. You know, Catherine fought for her marriage, and she fought for her right because she was the rightful queen of England. You know, till this day, you know, I will argue with everybody that she was always Henry's queen, and she was always the rightful queen. And just how much of a badass she was. You know, she was 6 months pregnant, riding out to a battlefield when Henry was away, because the Scots were coming to invade England. And I believe it was about 1513. The Scots were coming to invade England, and Henry had gone. It might have been the French. No, because Henry had went to fight the French, but the Scots were like, oh, the king's gone, so let us sneak in here. But, you know, Catherine, who was the queen at the time, was like, no, you're not. This is my country as much as it is my husband's. And she drove them all out. And it's just an amazing story that you don't hear about, because all you hear about is crazy Henry VIII. No one cares about him. He's not that interesting. It's the wives and the women in history. Even Henry's mother, Elizabeth of York, what an interesting woman. Again, who had more of a claim to the throne than her own husband. You know, it's just fascinating. Always found it so fascinating.
That's great. So, you know, kind of what you were alluding to, that there, you know, for example, the series on the Stars networks, that there's a much more fascinating, or you know, stories that, you know, that life, the truth, it can be more you know, entertaining than fiction.
Exactly. You know, like, and because those shows are very dramatized, not everything is 100% true,
Hmm.
but it's almost like, why are you dramatizing this? The real history is so much more interesting, and honestly, in my opinion, at times so much more heartbreaking. Like I said, I'll go back to my example of Catherine of Aragon. She loved Henry. She genuinely loved him so much. And if you really look at their love story, because everyone claims Anne Boleyn was the love of Henry VIII's life, and I disagree with that. I disagree with that, because Catherine was honestly the only wife he truly respected. Because it wasn't until Catherine got difficult and put her foot down and was like, no, you're not moving it out. Because when he originally wanted the divorce, he was like, you can pick your lands, blah blah blah. Because he knew she had Spain in her back pocket. She was a very, very powerful woman in Europe at the time. And it's heartbreaking, because they were married for 20 years. And take away the loyalty and the fact, a woman, you know, this is a woman who struggled with fertility. You know, she was pregnant, I want to say 8 or 9 times, and the only person who survived was her daughter Mary, you know, who would eventually become Queen of England, and then eventually, unrightfully so, dubbed Bloody Mary. But that's a whole nother tangent I could get into. But it's truly the woman died of heartbreak. She died alone. She still called herself the queen until the day she died. And the fact that Henry celebrated her death. So you celebrated the death of a woman who loved you unconditionally, kept her away from her daughter. It's the real pain and suffering these people went through. It's just how strong she was, how strong and how set she was. It's just amazing. It's amazing and so fascinating. You know, it's like you can put yourself in her shoes. You know, like, husband's leaving me for a younger woman, leaving a child, blah blah blah. It's a whole relatable. It's relatable. You know.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, with your, you know, fascinating and nation with this period of history, and just, you know, staying with it. What's kind of like the most weird is thing, or interesting, unique thing that you've found that many people may not know?
How much witchcraft was involved in those times. And you know, you always hear witches being burnt at the stake in that time, but
Right.
I guess what was really interesting was, so Elizabeth of York, who was the mother of Henry VIII and wife to Henry VII, her mother, Elizabeth Woodville, who was the wife of Edward IV. And you know, the War of the Roses, that would take a whole episode to explain. But when Edward IV was ousted from power, Elizabeth Woodville, it is said, it was rumored that she was a witch. And that's honestly up to people to decide, look at the evidence. I think she was. I'm really big into spirituality and stuff like that. And it's said she put a curse on the people who ousted her husband. And honestly, she put a curse on the people who ousted her husband, and it was basically the firstborn son, or it was you know, it was for the people. Sorry, I'm getting jumbled, but you know, Elizabeth Woodville's sons, the princes in the tower, they died, and she wanted to get revenge. So she was like, I'm gonna put a curse. And so the next people of this bloodline, their firstborn sons will die. And that's what happened. Henry VII's firstborn son, Arthur, died when he was 15. When Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon had their first child, it was a boy, and he was born alive. He was Henry Tudor, the Duke of Cornwall. You know, he died after only 52 days of life, and they could not have a living son. And even Henry VIII, he did have a son. He had a son by his third wife, Jane Seymour, but Edward died. His son Edward died when he was only 15. So I've just always found that weird. So I definitely think there was some divine intervention on that.
Oh, that is very interesting. Wow. So another thing, too, that the listeners may be interested is that you do some writing, and what you kind of focus on is realistic fiction. And I would imagine that this helps out with the wacky world of professional wrestling immensely.
It definitely does, because, you know, writing for me has always been a source of therapy. You know, my stories were always intense, and they always had a lot of thought and detail into them. And, you know, I made original characters, and they were so detailed. And it's just always been a big fact of, this is relatable. You know, you read a good book, like, again, one of my favorite authors, Ellen Hopkins, you know, she wrote a trilogy, and it's called the Clank trilogy. There's 3 books in it. It's Clank, Glass, and Fallout. And she wrote it based off of her daughter's addiction to crystal meth. And it was just so relatable and real. And that's what I wanted to do in my writing. You know, I'm not a professional writer. Mm-hmm. I could never see myself doing writing as a job, but, you know, I'll just say it. I'm not embarrassed. I wrote fan fiction. You know, I was one of those people, and I wrote about wrestlers. I wrote stories and stories about Brie Bella, Nikki Bella, all, you know, the divas and stuff like that. And then I got to the point where I was like, let me make a story about a wrestler, an original wrestler that I came up with, and I did. And she became very, very important to me. And I still have my drafts of her and my outlines of her character in my Google Drive to this day. And it really just helped me get my creative mind going. And it's really helped me with wrestling when coming up with a character and how I'm going to present myself to the audience, because I've presented characters to audiences. I've presented characters in books. So it's definitely a skill that I've taken from writing and tried to apply it to wrestling.
Awesome. Now, the listeners probably are in my head, thinking, you know, I would be amiss as the, not only am I the host of RMP Radio, of course, I am also the merch guy at Rocky Mountain Pro. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on maybe getting this published, getting this edited and published, and making it available for the fans to purchase?
I've thought about it. I have definitely thought about it, you know, because I've created such a world of wrestling. I basically put my character in the world of wrestling, and I took real events. Like the whole premise for this character is that she comes from a fictionalized, it's all fictionalized, but she comes from a very proud and very stern and proud wrestling family. You know, her family is wrestlers, and the whole story is she was trained from a really young age to be the best. And it's an interesting story. You know, there's a lot of twists and turns in her story, and I've thought about it because I don't think there's a lot of, you know, now with shows like Heels and stuff like that and Dark Side of the Ring, there still isn't a lot of entertainment for wrestling fans that isn't an actual wrestling match. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to rule it out. I definitely won't rule it out publishing, you know, her story. It's definitely something I want to think more about.
Yeah, well, I you know, the reason I ask this is because, you know, this is a very unique item that could be offered for this. You know, of course, here at Rocky Mountain Pro, we also do have we have published a comic book, and we still have some of it copies available. If I could do a cheap plug for the merch table, but it would be very cool, and I think a lot of wrestling fans, you know, we do have various interests and things of that nature. So I know a lot of do like to read comic books or a lot of common things or video games, things of nature. But I think a lot of people do like to read. I know that we in the Colorado community, we've had some wrestlers that actually have published, you know, not non-fiction books, you know, for example. So, you know, it's something that be very cool and unique, if I must say so, that we could possibly throw out there. So I'd say listeners, stay tuned.
Definitely.
So kind of going from there, from writing and being creative, you know, kind of, you know, maybe turning the dial up a little bit. One thing that you're passionate about is activism, and specifically, you told me that one thing that in your life that you did pursue was from you know, from real life, is you had a little run-in with sexism. You want to tell the listeners about that?
So it really started in middle school, and that, you know, people are changing. We're on the cusp of becoming real teenagers and stuff like that. And that's when I noticed things like the dress code getting enforced. And I just always thought it was so stupid because, you know, you'd have boys take their shirts off in the middle of class. A teacher wouldn't even tell them to put it back on. But God forbid a girl wears a pair of shorts that doesn't touch her fingertips. And it was a whole thing. It was very, it was something that just very shook me, almost shook me to my core, because I am a very stubborn person. So if you tell me go change my pants, I'm going to be like, no, I'm not going to change my pants. I like these pants. And I remember it was my 6th grade teacher who I absolutely love. And she really made me the person I am. And I think that's because she would argue with me, and we would argue, and very special person. So shout out to Miss Lynch. But I remember I was wearing this pair of shorts, and she was like, those are too short. And I was like, no, they're not. I'm fine. You know, there's other girls, there's guys with their shirts off, and you're not saying anything to them. And I remember we got into a, you know, little 6th grade me was getting into a fight with this woman in the middle of the playground because I would not go change my shorts. And she was like, do you want to go talk to the principal? And I was like, yeah, I do. And I went and I talked to the principal. I told her, I'm not changing my shorts, so you might as well send me home because this is stupid. You know, I remember I missed about an hour and a half of class because my shorts were a bigger issue than me missing class. And I always just, it's always something that's bugged me because I was a girl, you know, and I went through changes earlier than, and I'm sure a lot of girls out there can relate, you know, I went through changes with my body a lot earlier than other girls did. So, you know, I'd wear something, you know, I'd wear a pair of shorts and I'd get yelled at, I'd get sent to the office, but I would see a girl wear the same pair of shorts and no one would say anything to her. And I was like, this this system is messed up. This system, we need to rework this system because this is not fair. This is not fair to me. This is not fair to the majority of the girls because it was always just the, you know, you were seeing I remember there was one, I was in the 7th grade and a boy had a great guy. He don't have a bad thing to say to him, but he wore a crop top to school and teachers didn't even say anything. They just let it slide. But especially in middle school, if a girl dared show just a sliver of her stomach, that was an incident report that was to the office. And I just was like, are you serious? This is really what we're doing right now? I just thought it was the stupidest system. And I still think it's the stupidest system. I could go on and on about dress codes. And, you know, I wrote so many papers and so many pieces about how ridiculous the dress code was and how sexism starts so early in the division of boys and girls. I mean, I think it honestly starts as soon as kindergarten because we're instantly pushed into these roles and it's just, no, you know, let kids figure out who they are without gender stereotypes and the girls have to be this way and you have to act this way and boys have to be this way and you have to act this way. No, you know, and my mind has always been, let's change that. Like, why does that have to be that way? And, you know, because the answer, you know, people would tell me, well, that's just the way it is. It just is that way. And I'm like, that doesn't work for me, brother. That doesn't work for me. You know?
Yeah, that's fascinating because you know that is what has been said for the longest time is that's what it is. Because I remember hearing things even like you mentioned. One thing you mentioned was that even sexism kind of starts way in kindergarten, as simple as, and I remember seeing a lot of news documentaries on this, is that a teacher will tend to, when they're asking a question of the class, they will tend to call on the boys in the class more than the girls, even though the girls have their hands up as to answer the question as well. So what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on what can be done to change this mindset? Because this is a societal issue that this is what the norm is. Do you have any thoughts or any things that you know could benefit and maybe make this change?
For me, it's always been and not teachers, because teachers already deal with enough. It's more because I remember I hated my principal in middle school because she would never listen to us. She would never sit down and be like, okay, why do you guys feel this way? It's you know, it's not that hard. You know, administrations are like, well, what do you want us to do about this? And it's listen to us. Listen to what we're saying. Yeah, we're kids, but we're not stupid. You know, just because you're older doesn't mean just because you're older and you're so set in your ways doesn't mean what we have to say isn't worth something. And you know, as somebody so young in the wrestling business, I've really had to find my voice because, you know, I'm just as confident as the 25-year-old wrestler. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's this resistance to change and changing that system that really bothers me because thankfully with social media and stuff like that, I do feel like younger people have found their voice. You know, for a long time it was just shut up and do what you're told. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. And now we have the place to be like, no, my generation is going to do things differently because we've seen what's happened and we've seen the things that have happened, and no, we want to break the cycle. So honestly, it's just a conversation that needs to be had. Like, we need to communicate in schools, from students to teachers to administration to parents to students to administration. It all starts out with a simple conversation.
Fascinating. I'm I'm really blown away about your thought on this. So it's given me a lot to think about. That what you see, and is this something that can be changed, something that can be improved to make society rock on, to continue on, to evolve. I guess
Yeah,
the basic
exactly.
best way to put that. That's very curious. It's fantastic. So that's great. So what else that maybe the Rocky Mountain Pro, the RMP radio listeners might be fascinated what you do with outside of the wrestling ring? Any other hobbies or interests, the things that you kind of keep a tab on?
I'm really big into spirituality, and I read tarot cards, and it's something I've done. I started reading tarot cards in about June 2020, and just to be able to connect, and I'm not trying to push my beliefs on anybody. I say believe in whatever you want. It's up to you. I don't think we should judge anybody for their beliefs, but yeah. It's been able to connect with myself on a deeper level and look inward for the answers. I have my crystals and I meditate, and I just feel more connected with myself and my psyche and with my chakras and stuff like that. It's just always been something that's interested me and something I've been very drawn to. I was always drawn to that stuff ever since I was little, like before the TikTok trends, before it became a trend, it was something that's always interested me and stuff like that, which ties in back to, Elizabeth Woodville and people being like, is she a witch? Is she not a witch? I remember reading about that when I was like 10 or 11. I was like, dang, that woman was dank if she was a witch. Dank as hell. Like it's honestly just being able to connect with your own self through spirituality and connect with the energies around you, because the way I believe is I believe in a divine energy. I believe in the universe, and to be able to connect with that universe, it's just very special. It's very special.
Yeah. Well, how do you connect with that? And do you have any suggestions of what people can do if they're curious about this?
Honestly, it's your own journey. And there's a lot, especially since spirituality and tarot cards, it's becoming more mainstream. And it's, on our TikTok feeds, it's on our Instagram feeds. And there's a million different people telling people, no, this is right, this is wrong, you can't do that. For me, my spiritual journey has been just figuring it out on my own and what I like and what I want to do and how I connect to things, It's honestly follow your own intuition. Mm-hmm. Follow your own intuition. There is no list to be spiritual. And that's why, with it becoming a trend on like TikTok and stuff like that, I feel like people have really lost sight of what it is, because people are so dedicated to being like, this is my set of rules, and if you're not doing it by my set of rules, you're wrong. And it's like any other religion, you have people being like, well, this is how I believe, this is the rules I follow, and this is true, and if you don't do that, you're a bad person. And I'm like, man, like, can't we just do what we want and connect with what we believe in and the way we want? And honestly, I just say follow your own intuition and do what you feel is right and what your body is telling you, what you feel, the energy you feel. Listen to yourself. Trust yourself.
That's very good sage advice from somebody so young as yourself, as if I must say. Well, that's great. Hey, Noelle, I think that might be a great landing spot to end this episode of Rocky Mountain Pro Radio. But I want to, of course, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Do let you go. We should, of course, let the listeners advise listeners to, of course, follow you out there on the social media, and then, of course, they should come and see you in action, where could they do all that?
So if you want to follow me and interact with me, which I absolutely love, you can go ahead and follow me on Instagram at Noelle Summit, and you can go ahead and find my Facebook page at Noelle Summit. And you can catch me every Tuesday night on Ignition down at the Winter Arena in Inglewood, Colorado. We're also on Twitch, Rocky Mountain Pro on Twitch. And be on the lookout for some t-shirts and stickers soon from Noelle.
Awesome. That's going to be great. Okay, well, thank you once again for coming on, and I'll be connecting with you in the future.
Awesome. I will talk to you then.
Once again, a big, huge thank you to Noelle Summit for coming on to this edition of RMP Radio. And like we say, get to know a little bit more about the person behind the wrestler, what they like to do outside of the wrestling ring, and their interests and their hobbies and things that they've just kind of are interested out there. Catch her, of course, on Rocky Mountain Pro Ignition and, possibly other places as well here in the future. All right, before we get out of here, let's pay some bills like they used to say back in the day. Want to get some merchandise of your favorite Rocky Mountain Pro superstars? Few different ways you can do that. First is you can head over to rmpwrestling.com, click on that merchandise link, or if you're in amazon.com or in the Amazon app, search for Rocky Mountain Pro. You've got a few choices you can choose from there, right from there. And then, of course, visit the merch table at each and every one of the shows that you attend with Rocky Mountain Pro. There's show exclusives that you can only pick up there. And then, of course, with that, I would not be fulfilling my duties as the merch guy at Rocky Mountain Pro. Follow me out there on the social medias, Mr. Fourth Row, MISTER, put a 4TH in the middle, end it with ROW, especially the Instagram, and you'll see a lot of these things right there. So that's the best way to do that. Of course, you can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter. You'll see those as well. It all kind of connects up with each other. Upcoming events, of course, each and every week on Tuesday night, the Tuesday Night Delight, we have Ignition from the Wimmer Arena, and we would greatly appreciate you guys to come out, and once you got over those Monday blues of this work week, come out on Tuesday nights and get lit up with Ignition there on Tuesdays. You can see all kinds of fantastic things. Follow your favorite Rocky Mountain Pro superstars out there on the social medias. Buy from those links that they present you, and that would be greatly appreciated. If you don't have a favorite, just spread it around. Pick somebody out there each and every week to get those purchases done. We would greatly appreciate it. And then, of course, we do have upcoming in the future, you'll be seeing charged episodes on Thursday nights, and then, of course, as we look into the future, our next pay-per-view, we got Peak of the Pack on April 29th, and then that next Saturday after that, because that's on a Friday, we'll be heading our next charge tapings on April 30th. You can go to rmpwrestling.com and click on that events link. You'll get all that information, all those specifics on times and doors opening and things like that. You can purchase tickets from there, but we can also, just like I just said, pick your favorite Rocky Mountain Pro personality, star, podcaster, referee, commentator, whoever it is, purchase from those links that they provide you right there. As for watching us from show to show, event to event, everything you can get at twitch.tv/Rocky Mountain Pro. You see Ignition, and for the time being, you'll see Charged on there. You can also see our shows youtube.com/Rocky Mountain Pro. And of course, we are on that Fight app. That's where the last pay-per-view, Never Broken. If you haven't watched Never Broken at the time of this recording, once this is done, go over to Fight TV, purchase that, $12.99, let you watch Never Broken as many times as you want, and you own it forever. You know, there's some events and shows that you purchase on things here and there, and you could only watch it once. So It's not a rental. It's you buy it, you own it with Fight TV with Rocky Mountain Pro, so you can. I have it on my account. I've even got Shocktober from years past still on there, and every once in a while I'll get it there too. And you of course can cheap plug there if you want to purchase some of the old pay-per-views for Rocky Mountain Pro. They should be on there as well, like the Shocktober one I just mentioned. Now, you want to follow us out there on the interwebs. Everything does start from rmpwrestling.com, so that's the first place to visit. See everything that we've got going on and happening, and you can see the roster there. You can see everything right there. And then on the social medias of the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, all of the username of the Rocky MTN Pro. Once again, I'll phonetically spell that for you. That is the Rocky Mike Tango November Pro. And as always, I want to thank you for listening to RMP Radio, where pro wrestling is elevated.